The Hell, Visions and their Equivalents. Visions and images are the only possibility to illustrate the condition of a soul for the spiritually blind man. Visions of hell are horror scenes. The root cause for these dreadful presentations are those not less dreadful spiritual characteristics of many people. The image of hell shall startle. It shall cause disgust for one's own despicable behavior pattern. With that, those visions would have fulfilled their purpose. Yet, all of us shall measure themselves, not his neighbor. The Lord reveals through his disciple and apostle John in the book The Spiritual Son, Volume 2, Chapter 108. That is, the actual base of all vices. Its name is imperiousness, a lust for power. With this term, we now have come to know the whole nature of the lowest hell, and this nature corresponds to the outer appearance of a celestial body. On the surface, the first degree of hell in the polyp-like seeking for pleasure can clearly be recognized. For everything that you can see there is based on gluttony, for there everything is a devourer, whatever you look at. In the more inner crust, the fasting and meagerness reveals itself. There is nowhere any vegetation. Everything lies there as in a rigid death that plans for revenge. At most you will see here and there some places of fire and hot water springs as corresponding images of the already visible anger of the spirits of this hell. Now let's go to the inner part of the earth. There we only discover a continuous, terrible and chaotic pushing and shoving. One fire ignites the other and stifles it again. Every drop of water that ends up in here is transformed immediately into a glowing vapor. The greater action here, the greater its reaction shows on the surface, and this will always, with great ease, weaken all these internal actions. And in this manner, everything is wisely guided by the Lord, so that also all these hells, despite their great abhorrence, must serve him for the eternal preservation of things. And this forced servitude, which is well known to the hellish spirits, is their greatest torment, because they see that, despite their reluctance, all their activities must in general correspond with the divine order. But this is also at the same time the eternal love and wisdom of the Lord, for only in this way it is possible to restrict the imperious actions of these evil beings. For if they see that the Lord can always turn their most evil plans to good, then they become angry and do nothing anymore, until they devise a new plan to act against the Lord. The Lord of course knows how to use them all, just like the ones before. This is, theoretically speaking, the activity and nature of the lowest hell. How this reveals itself in an image we now want to contemplate, going through all of the three hells. Volume 2, Chapter 109. When you received information about the sun, you saw what the image of the first hell looks like, as well as the different ways by which one comes into the first hell. I only have to add that the seal of the hellish spirits that you saw in the first hell is firstly set on pleasure and gluttony. This condition seems to be the same as the one on earth, in which men do also everything possible to, as you used to say, bring bread on the table. Some set up different businesses, others look for a job as public officers. Some look for a good marriage. They do not do all this for the sake of what is good, but exclusively for their own sake and the daily bread. In this condition, they do not care much for one or the other glory, but they are mostly interested in a certain livelihood. In the heavenly manner, one is solely concerned about love and to know God. The Lord will take care of all the rest. But in the hellish manner, one is particularly concerned about the opposite. They want to have a certain well-being, and at best they think as long as I'm first of all assured of all the external necessities, then I will see if the spirit is satisfied with this well-being. When he then possesses such external well-being, which usually goes together with some modest possession, he will soon become haughty, which is related to his possessions, and which he continuously strengthens with a certain splendor. For this reason, also the young employees and new managers, each one of course in their own way, boast more and more. Soon they do not know any more how to sit, stand, walk, look, listen, or speak to immediately show and let recognize from their face how rich they are and what kind of important job they occupy. Once such people are in this way provided with everything, they do not have to take care for anything anymore, for they have their fixed income and their daily bread. Now they can begin to take care of what is spiritual. But the opposite happens. Now, together with this well-being, the boasting and the lust for power come forward. That is why they strive more and more to move to the top and become even richer than the managers. In this situation, they become filled with jealousy and inner hate towards those who stand somehow in their way. Their neighborly love goes so far that many subordinate employee longs fervently for the death of the employee that is above him, so that in such situation he can take the place of the one who stands above him. The manufacturer's most fervent desire is the bankruptcy of those who are in the same business, so that in this way he can draw the whole business to himself. Yes, his neighborly love goes so far that, if possible, he would like to drown all his competitors in a drop of water. He also undertakes everything, no matter where and how it can be done, to bring his next competitors to ruin. If you look at this worldly behavior a little closer, you can see the first hell with all its gluttony already completely before you, and you can also see very clearly represented how this changes into hate, anger, envy, and lust for power in the second hell. You only have to take away the outer moral and civilian laws of the state, and you have the first and second hell, literally and figuratively, before your eyes. That which on the earth stills testifies of a certain civilized society under the protection of moral and civilian laws will degenerate here when those laws will fall away and turn immediately into war, lust for robbery, and murder. Here you have the perfect image of the first hell. If you want the image of the second hell, do the same. You will discover hidden cunningness everywhere, and you nowhere will see people or spirits together who are not each other's mutual deadly enemies. Even if they outwardly treat each other with kindness, great politeness, and also hypocritical mutual love, this love is only pure hate, for this is only politics, to bring the opponent in a peaceful mood and to nicely unarm him in order to then, without resistance, overtake him and bring him to ruin. Look at your earth at the so-called crawlers and bootlickers. These are usually the worst enemies of those for whom they crawl. They lift them up for the same reason as the vulture picks up the turtle in order to, once he has reached the right height with him, drop him down in a shameful manner and win in its way even more by their fall. Look, this again is literally and figuratively the pure hellish love of the second degree. That is why in this hell all kinds of deceitful arts are worked out in order to catch each other and bring them to ruin in the foolish supposition that they can win more and more with the fall of others, no matter in what way. In this manner, our disciples are thoroughly learning about the hells, first theoretically and then practically. And so in a very short time we took a closer look to the images of the first two hells. He who will somehow think about this description will have everything clearly before him. For what concerns the image of the third hell, we will describe this separately, for this must be very well understood, because it is the cause of every evil. Volume 2, Chapter 110. Visions. You will certainly think, and many others even more, if they were present on this information, it is praiseworthy and from a moral point of view also useful to hear such information by which the fundamental evil is as if visually represented. But there are now on earth so many descriptions of hell. They all seem to have the same origin, but how different they are from each other. For the one person, hell is a pool of fire and sulfur. For the other, a gnawing glowworm. Again for another, a raging fire, an eternal darkness, an eternal death. According to some, the damned are tortured, cooked and fried. To others, they are simply barrens. Some see hell as a terrible cold, again others as the fire of boiling anger. Some see in it miserable, malformed and starving human forms, again others a collection of the most strange, hideous forms that could have originated from a human form. And so the notion of hell became a real Proteus, which cannot be compared to any form. For the pure human reason, this is a very acceptable and for this time very understandable image of hell. But who can tell whether in the course of time this image will not be pushed aside by again a different one? For nothing was represented in so many multiple forms than actually this place of horror under the name of hell. Good, I say to you, my dear friends, your wearisome objection has its good reasons, for it is completely based upon the reality of the common notions about hell. Therefore, I want and must show you hell in a general light, in which every up to now common imagination of hell, no matter where on earth, becomes completely justified. If we only look at hell from the outer and superficially, it is understandable that it appears as a true Proteus, with a never-changing image, but it is quite different when one wants to thoroughly understand it. In order to make this more understandable to you, we will, with the means of little examples, bring this difficult question into the light so that it will become very clear for everyone. Let us take a country where thousands of people are living. All these people, with the exception of those who are insane, idiots, and infants, have all kinds of multicolored ideas about the secret politics of the country. He who wants to know them more closely can speak with different people about this. The one sees only war, the other only secret treason, again another secret national deception, again others sheer wisdom. Some cry aloud about injustice, others lack words to praise the Constitution and the secret politics of the country. But only these are sheer opinions of the more developed part of the people about the secret political government. But whoever wants to hear foolishness should go to the dark chambers of the farmers in the countryside. Then he can be assured that he will hear anything that can come up in an undeveloped, rough human fantasy. For instance, that the emperor is planning to poison his city, or that he wants to contaminate a certain part of the country with the pest, or that he made a covenant with another king to kill in one night the people of another region with the sword, to take possession of the goods of the citizens that he would kill, not to mention other stupidities, like for instance that the king personally sold his soul or the souls of his citizens to the devil in return for a great earthly advantage. It should not be proven any further that all this is true, for everyone is free to daily convince himself of this. That this is so cannot be doubted, but the question is, who among the thousands of people who express their political ideas has the right understanding of this and has thereby expressed the true meaning of the basic principles of the secret government of the country? How can one have a basic idea of something which he does not understand himself? Look, the reason lies partly in the outer image as well as in the personality of the one who looks upon the image. The less the observer himself is innerly awakened, the more senseless will be the ideas that he forms about the images. And look, this is precisely also the case with the ideas about hell. It was only granted to very few seers to receive a deeper notion in the nature of this place, but it was permitted to a lot to see one or the other image of this place. And so the idea of so many images always exceeded reality. For this reason, the so many different forms about hell have multiplied, and nobody knew and knows precisely up to now what to think about that place. Next question. Who in the country could set up the best basic principles for the secret government? Certainly no other except the wise monarch himself. When the matter is irrefutably so, then this question will also apply to the dark relations in the beyond. So the answer can only be that only the Lord over all heavens, as well as over all hells, can set up the right and generally valid basic principles over this place. But as someone who is initiated in the secret basic principles of the government will very easily perceive the cause of all the ideas that are spread around in the nation, so also will the one who knows from the Lord the true nature of that place that is called hell understand the cause of all the other foolish ideas about this. Every person carries heaven and hell in himself according to his personality. If he becomes aware of his own personality by a certain situation, then he only becomes aware of his own developed hell or his highly imperfect heaven. Numberless different ideas can develop along that way. However, can this be already considered as the cause? Certainly not more than if someone would come and claim that the sea is only a half shoe deep because he measured it along the coast with a walking stick. The same is here also the case for all the seers who claim, I saw hell in this or that situation, and also not more than if someone would take the shallow shore, although it also belongs to the sea, for the actual bottom of the sea, and neither can this visualized image be considered as the actual hell. But how the actual hell can be found and thoroughly seen, we will see next. Volume 2, Chapter 112, Visions. Firstly, let us take a rich speculator as example. Look closer at this eternally insatiable one. What was the goal of his love and will? Only to acquire. Although somehow lawful and permissible, the possessions of a whole country and finally of a whole kingdom, in no matter what way. and once he is successful in this, take also several kingdoms or the whole surface of the earth. Although he will not completely succeed in such a plan, and he probably will not realize his idea completely, but he nevertheless does not let it go, and he secretly thinks, if I only had an army of at least a couple of million invincible soldiers, then I would gather all the gold, silver, and all the noble stones and pearls of the whole world and pile them up. Also many have the following wish: if only the pest could break out in the country that would kill everyone except me, then I would be the natural universal heir of the whole country. And if then people would come from another country who would dispute my inheritance, the pest would immediately grab and strangle them at the border. Look, this is an image of the lowest hell, which you can daily notice among the people of all classes, starting with the simple stallholder to the greatest speculator. What prevents them from realizing such so-called praiseworthy ideas? Only the fatal matter. If we take that away, and if we consider then the absolute spirit with the same qualities, then we have the lowest hell in top condition before us. Secondly, there is an officer with a lower rank before us. What is the most important thought which abides in his heart? Perhaps the thought to prove helpful services to the country? Oh no, that is the last one. To promote, that is the most important thought. If it were possible, climbing every hour one step higher, be at least a general in 1 year, and as such be promoted as soon as possible. Suppose he reaches the highest degree, then his plan will be, or at least his most important thought, and now let us go out with great armies to conquer all nations. Once they are conquered and I have the power, then all emperors, kings and monarchs must tremble for my sword. The one who will not have recognized the lust for power in our officer must surely be struck with a sevenfold blindness. And also here, for what reason can our officer not make it happen? The same as above. The material natural limiting conditions. Matter restricts our hero, and he must accept his subordinate degree as an officer, whether he likes it or not. That is why he scolds once and a while and tries to let his subordinates feel his lust for power as much as possible. The least of offenses of a subordinate is punished with tyrannical mercilessness. Take away the material obstacles from this officer, and you will have the second perfect image of the fundamental hell in an unsurpassed form before you. You also will find this image very often, especially in those categories of people who are entitled to carry a sword, and also with those who have the privilege to lead a caricature of a so-called noble weapon for their insignificant name. There you will see the lust for power everywhere in a form that really stands out, and this is now precisely the nature of the lowest of all hells, which is insatiable, and which wants to extend its imperiousness and lust into infinity. More examples will follow. Volume 1, Chapter 18. Here is already a broad window. Look in and tell me what you have seen there. Oh, you already fall back at the first house? So what will happen to you then at the next house? You say completely astonished, for God's sake, that is incredible, inhuman, unthinkable. In the background, on a white bench, a human monster was sitting. It was fat beyond human nature. It had a disgusting sagging belly, which filled more than half of the room. At the neck there was one fat bulge atop another, and in front of him a group of slimmed-down skeletal human beings, which were pushing towards this most hideous blubberbutt, and begged him that he would eat them up. And indeed this monster already had before him on a table several completely gnawed off human skeletons. But some in the background were cursing this monster and wanted to dart at it. But they were held back by those to which this monster promised to consume some of their flesh also and transform it into his fat. You, however, ask now, what is the explanation of this strange and atrocious image? Such things may understand whoever is able to, but we do not comprehend it. But I tell you, my dear brothers and friends, if you do not comprehend this at first glance, then you must walk around on earth completely blind. Is this not an excellent image of a usurer, and in particular of a selfish industrial tycoon, which has made it his life's mission to consume everything that surrounds him which is profitable? Define the satiable boundary of such a usurer. Is his concupiscence not infinite? Would he feel just slightly guilty if he would be able to seize all treasures and riches of the whole world? Will he shed only one tear if he might be able to seize and consume the life of all widows and orphans on earth? I tell you, the poor walk to him in droves and sacrifice to him all they have and their energy and strength. For the most disdainful wage they let themselves almost completely consume by him. Others carry their few treasures to him and call themselves lucky if he accepts them for a woeful interest. Yes, many deceived ones are going so far that they see it truly as a necessity that they had to be cheated, according to the state of affairs, without his culpability. Some other greedy ones, but yet imprudent poor worldly devils, realizing the dirty tricks of this rich one, threaten him with destruction and death. But the interested parties of our usurer, realizing that they would perish even faster if he died, as if he would be completely satisfied, so they prevent such a coup as much as possible. Now, what do you say regarding this image? Is it not sublime and shows this vice in its stripped condition? How it really looks like? But such things are only an indulgent start. Another image. You saw here also in the background an awful fatly cramped being. This being had a terrible bloated belly, his head a huge mouth like the one of a hyena. His arms looked like two strong giant snakes, his feet like those of a bear. On his big belly was kind of an altar erected, in the midst of this altar a double-edged spear sword. On this spear you see many slimmed down human beings skewered. One of the snake arms was continually engaged to take the skewered ones down off the spear and to throw them into the mouth of the cormorant. Another snake arm grasped to all sides, catching the poor and unhappy human beings that were banned into this gruesome room. And the first one he could grasp, he crushed and threw him onto the spear on his belly altar. The great wailing of the unhappy ones made his arm only more active. Look, that is the image you beheld. How do you like that? You say, quite terrible and bad. And further, this is a little too hard. It is true, on the earth many bad things happen. But regarding this image, it seems that it is obviously a major exaggeration. But I say to you, here there is not too much and also not too little, but always the naked truth. Just look on your earth at certain trade industry heroes. Take a measuring stick and measure his throat of avarice. Then examine his arms, how they are conditioned, and you will find out that they are completely equal with those here. One is busy to continually bury, and the other one plundering through cleverness, tricks, or violence. If he has made a catch, it will immediately be skewered as a sacrifice of avarice on the already known altar. You ask, why is this altar situated on the belly of this monster? Because under the belly is to be understood the most dirty kind of avarice, greed, selfishness, and self-love. The big belly indicates the excessive nature of such a love, and the altar on the belly indicates the worldly, honorable, and exalted one, and therefore the proud and arrogant nature of such magnificent, industrial tycoons. What does the erected double-edged sword or spear on the altar mean? Such things you should be able to guess at first glance. Have you never heard of the commercial law or exchange law? Look, there it is on the altar. Only a poor and miserable being may let himself be caught, and therefore it will be grasped without any mercy, and pardoned, and be scourged by the law, and thus be immediately scourged to death by such a law. You ask, who are all those many poor ones which are diligently caught, and why is the spear double-edged? Those many poor ones are all kinds of people. One part are the small merchants, which are at the mercy of the catch. One part are those which must deliver their products out of necessity to such a great speculator. A third part are all kinds of foreign people who stand in a commercial relation with such a house. A fourth part are other people who are eager to buy. A fifth part are other trade partners. A sixth part is the people who serve in the house. And the seventh part are those who depend on such a house under various differences and relations. For all these groups, the double-edged spear is continually ready, but we almost forgot what the double edge of the spear means. But this is also easy to grasp with hands. One side means the commercial policy, but what does the second edge mean? It is that by which the commercial policy is supported. But whereby is it supported? By the conceded right to grasp each branch of her deed, that it yields the reliable usury percentage to her. Do you understand such things? Should you not exactly understand this, start a research and tell me where it is legally dictated to the merchant class to make profit. Therefore, the spear cuts on both sides, firstly through the well-known commercial policy, and on the other side through the unlimited profit-seeking, and these both edges are so tightly connected with the commercial law as the edges with the sword. Is this image not appropriate, and does it not show, as I have said, not more and not less as the naked truth? Now you say that image is correct, but there is also no doubt left that it belongs into the lowest hell. Basically, you are not wrong, but it remains what was said previously, for all of this only indicates the vice itself, without aiming at the people who actually practice such vices. Thus it is a hellish nature, but it is not hell itself, because if you would behold such things in the real hell, you would feel completely different already, looking at it from afar off, as you now experience it here, being very close to this vicious image. Volume 1, Chapter 19. You say, O dear friend and brother, terrible, yes dreadful was the sight. In the background we saw a crouching being. This had the appearance of a most atrocious and terrible dragon. This dragon had indeed a human-like head, but instead of hair, there were an uncountable amount of the most poisonous snakes visible, which bended and looked to all sides with their fiery eyes. If there is no prey approaching this gruesome dwelling. More towards the foreground, close to the walls, we saw again a group of miserable beings with a human form, which were shackled at their hands and feet. Many free snakes crawled around them and bit their veins open, sucking out their blood. But the nasty being in the background had in his right hand, which was surrounded by a snake, a glowing sword, and in the other hand something like a scroll. This scroll often defoliated the snake, which was wreathed around his arm and darting around in the scroll with its tongue, as if it wanted to draw the monster's attention to something which was sitting in the background. After such an act, we saw that from a dark background soon several seemingly most unhappy human beings were pulled out by a crowd of snakes. Soon thereafter, the monster sitting in the background was waving his glowing sword over them, tearing some to pieces. Others were shackled again by the snakes who had human arms and brought back to the other ones. Such things we have seen, and not more or less. I say to you, you have seen quite well and discovered everything, but now you say, dear friend and brother, a vice resembling this gruesome image can for sure not exist on earth. But I tell you, even much more inconceivable and much worse things exist on earth, as this image illustrates. But now guess, what vice is hidden within this image? Look, this image represents the worldly, tyrannical, domineering policy. Everything that is coming close to imperiousness is also coming characteristically close to this image in the inward parts. But you may not understand by this the wise statesmanship of righteous and by God anointed kings or rulers, which must naturally observe their people, so that the people will not corrupt themselves too much or even decay by their mutual and great malice. This image only shows that hellish roguery when people, regardless of their status or rank, are trying to reach any kind of domineering position by nefarious groveling. You want more of such awful images? You can read further chapters of The Spiritual Son, the Lord's Revelations to Jacob Lorber.